We've covered an array of shows over the past year and a half, and yes, I know it's crazy that I've been doing this for that long, but it's high time that I've told you my favorite show. All Hail King Julien is my favorite show, at least as far as animated shows go. It's a spin-off prequel to the Madagascar series, set before the events of the first movie, and is King Julien's origin story, detailing just how his lemur kingdom came to be by the time the movies introduced him. Now, one thing I must admit is that I never actually saw any of the Madagascar movies. My only exposure to the series is this show and the Penguins. But King Julien always stole the show when he came on screen. Some people might get turned off by his arrogance and selfishness, but the writers know when to not cross the line and make him unlikable. And that is by making it clear that King Julien is not malicious, he's just delusional and dim-witted. This show goes into that a lot more, and we learn that King Julien is actually a product of his environment. He comes from a royal lineage where all of his predecessors were cruel and self-absorbed, so much of this show is about him breaking that cycle. Also, he's the 13th Julien in his family, just that you should know. On top of having damn good lore, this show is a barrel of laughs, and I'll be looking at the Season 1 episode One More Cup, which talks about coffee dependency. Should be relatable for some of you. This episode starts out with King Julien fishing in the Cove of Wonders when Maurice comes to tell him that he's behind on his daily checklist. Turns out he's using Mort as a fishing hook of sorts so he can grab a sack he found in the water. He manages to secure it after wrestling it away from a crocodile, and when he opens the sack, he finds coffee beans. Of course, King Julien thinks they're magic beans because the sack says, "Taste the magic." He tries to eat them, but he ends up choking on them. Mort finds instructions on how to brew coffee on the back of the sack, and so they go to their tech whiz Timo, who builds them a coffee machine.
Okay, the instructions on the bag were vague, and by vague I mean non-existent. But this should work, or it will explode, killing us all.
I'm willing to take that chance.
Lord Farquaad would be proud. Timo brews the coffee in a very satisfying scene, I must admit, and lets King Julien have some once it's ready. Of course, since he didn't let it cool down, King Julien freaks out and burns his mouth.
Ah, the royal tongue is on fire!
Here!
I'm blind! That's better.
Hey Timo, what up with the pickled eyes? King Julien says the coffee didn't do anything for him and decides to drink the whole pot instead, to no avail. He breaks down for a bit, but then the caffeine kicks in and he's full of energy. This caffeine rush allows him to run through his whole checklist in mere minutes.
King Julien, have you slept?
Nope. It's amazing what you can accomplish without sleep. All the do's are done's now, Maurice.
College students are either envious of him or revere him as an idol. When Clover asks where she can get some, King Julien says he has an idea.
I have an announcement. King Julien is dead. I'm not the zombie! It's a metaphor, people, look it up!
Oh yeah, a running gag in this show is that the Lemur Kingdom is easily startled. Like, they legit go into a frenzy over the slightest provocation. Not only does it never get old, but it's great to see King Julien look smart next to someone other than Mort for a change. King Julien reveals that he's opened a coffee stand, and that he renames coffee as Brown Julien, fittingly enough. Following his promise from last night, he lets Clover have first dibs to convince everyone.
How do you feel? Wait! Before you answer, drink 5 more cups. Just 5. Yes, go ahead.
Nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
I have to ask, doesn't that technically count as jungle pollution? The 6 cups work their magic on Clover, and everyone lines up to get their hands on Brown Julien. Maurice, however, is skeptical on how this will affect the kingdom.
I'm still a little unclear on the no sleep is a good thing theory.
Yeah, that's because your tiny brain is not yet Brown Julianized. Drink up!
Yeah. Tastes like Fusa burps. Wonder how long it takes before
Lightweight.
What? What's wrong?
Isn't it obvious? I have a drinking problem.
Oh, that's because you're chewing instead of swallowing.
Oh. It's a miracle. Brown Julien has cured my drinking problem.
Yes, there are many under-the-radar jokes like that in this show, and I love every single one of them. Over the course of 5 days, the lemurs completely wipe out their coffee supply and are starting to feel the effects of not just caffeine crash, but flat out withdrawals. They go to see King Julien, who has also crashed out, but they get an unlikely savior.
King Julien will be fine.
What?
Sorry for startling you. As you know, coffee's effects vary. In my case, it made me incredibly intelligent and gave me a smashing accent.
That is just fucking brilliant. It turns out King Julien needs more coffee to maintain his dependence, but once he learns there isn't any, he screams it out, loud enough for his subjects to hear. They get angry, but then King Julian's nemesis Carl appears.
Everything is going to be all right. It can't be. There's no need for violence. Not yet, at least.
Hello, Carl.
King Julien, you remember me. One should remember his arch-nemesis.
Oh, is that what you are? I thought you were the guy who failed to defeat me once with his evil genius plan.
That's an arch-nemesis.
If you need to know, Carl hates King Julien because he thinks he's some sort of hidden genius, and Carl considers that a threat to his own intelligence. Their dynamic is a lot like the one between Perry the Platypus and Doofenshmirtz, except here the animosity is played a bit more straight. Carl reveals that his whole apparition was his doing, and that by transporting coffee to the Cove of Wonders via crocodiles, he'd get all the lemurs addicted to coffee, and once King Julien ran out, he'd take over and supply them with the goods. His plan ends up working, and the lemurs abandon King Julien for Carl. So now it's just Julien, Maurice, and Clover. Or is it?
Thank you guys for standing by me.
We weren't actually
Of course, Your Majesty.
Smart Mort? You too?
I'll always love you, King Julien, no matter how intelligent I am.
How's that for a heartwarming bullet point on TV tropes? He brought coffee with him to get everyone's spirits up, and he announces that the way to reclaim the kingdom is to destroy Carl's coffee supply. Conveniently enough, King Julien knows about Carl's family coffee field, which is being tended to by Malagasy jumping rats. They take a moment to go over the plan.
Okay, our mission is clear. Alright, to reclaim my throne, we must destroy Carl's coffee stranglehold on my kingdom and replace it with my own coffee stranglehold on my kingdom.
Or we could just stop drinking coffee.
They rejected Maurice's message because he told them the truth. While Mort distracts the rats by convincing them to unionize, the rest of the royal council breaks into Carl's lair, but unfortunately he was waiting for them and has them ambushed. When it looks like it's hopeless, Mort and his unionized rats save them and allow them to escape. However, their getaway is postponed as it looks like Carl regained the loyalty of his rats since Mort's intelligence began waning along with the caffeine.
The jumping rats? How?
Please. A rat doesn't know what a stock option is. I promised them something they could understand. Free Bagel Fridays every other month.
Bunch of scabs they are. Mort yet again saves King Julien. Julien grabs the blaster and destroys the coffee field, and he tries to blast Carl, but the blaster takes several minutes to reload. Sounds a little impractical, don't you think? Carl escapes while swearing revenge, and the episode ends with Mort returning to his regular self. And that was one more cup. The one thing I like about this choice of using coffee as the addictive substance is that's a realistic addiction that most people just ignore outright. Think about it. Everyone always talks about how they need at least 2 cups of coffee a day without even considering that something is a little off about that. And while I'm more into energy drinks now, I remember I used to be this way. I would get a large cup of coffee like twice a day. Beyond that, I love the conflict here from a characterization and writing standpoint. It was at this moment we knew that Carl is not one to be trifled with, earning his place as King Julian's nemesis. I'm rating this episode an 8 out of 10. It's got great comedy and an even better story. I definitely recommend this show to anyone mildly into the Madagascar series, and if you never even got into it, this could also be a good starting point. Thanks for watching. This is the Nihilistic Snake slithering out of here.